Hello, BookTube. Sorry about the unusual light, but a gray and chilly winter day has interrupted the advance of spring here in Boston, and it's a little dim here at Hyde Cottage. But it didn't stop me from thrift shopping. I got a nice pile of things, and I thought I would share with you a few of them, starting with this from the year 2000. This is the New Penguin Book of English Verse, edited by Paul Keegan, and it's wonderful. I know English verse collections are 10 a penny, but if you see this one, you should get it because it's wonderful. He takes a old-fashioned, wonderful, wonderfully provocative approach to the subject of an English verse anthology by arranging the poems by date of publication rather than just a broader chronological grouping, so that you can actually watch when these things appeared, when they were actually in the public consciousness for the first time. I have no idea what happened to my original copy. I had it 10 years ago, but a familiar refrain. It's gone now, but now I have it back, at least for the time being. Another one is an old novel, 1960, I think. It's one that will be familiar to a lot of you who know me in real life. It's The Saltweed Factor by John Barth, a big, rollicking, historical novel that is really the apotheosis of plot. This is one of the most plotted books that I know of. All about a feckless English poetaster who goes to America and loses 6 or 7 kinds of virginity. I can't recommend it high enough. I believe The Saltweed Factor is currently out of print, but it shows up at used bookstores all the time. And if you're in the mood for a big, subversive, hugely intelligent historical novel, you can't go wrong with this one. You can go wrong with a lot of what John Barth wrote, but not that book. The next two are gems that I also didn't have. I'd be glad to put them back in my library, and they're both, oddly enough, from 1942. The first one is The Year of Decision, 1846, by Bernard Devoto, a great American historian, who's introduced in this volume by Catherine Drinker Bowen, who was also not too bad as a historian. And she gives a little paragraph here that I wanted to quote because it's lovely. It's just right. Devoto was generous to other writers, not a common trait among members of the Union. When a manuscript needed editing, he was ready with time and effort. And he was a believer in good editing. He knew there is more than one way to compose a sentence, and that the right way may take some seeking. He did not spare those who came to him. The treatment was rough, and sensitive souls have been known to turn and flee at his approach. Yet he understood the writer's psychology, I think, as few men have understood it, although he declared that he seldom knew the right thing to say to authors. They bleed on, he wrote, from wounds healed long ago, which began by seeming mortal, but turned out only to need a Band-Aid or 5 pages of type. That captures the man, and that sharp humor runs all throughout his great histories, and this is my favorite of the bunch. And look at this. This thing was printed in 1942. Look at those colors. It hasn't faded at all. It must have been kept in somebody's chest for 50 years. So I was happy to find it. I'll try not to get rid of it. Next one, also from 1942, an absolute classic, one of the great memoirs of all time, West with the Night by Beryl Markham. Great female aviator, the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic from east to west. She started in England and ended nose down in the dirt in Nova Scotia. And a heck of a writer. As you will see in connection with her almost always, you will see a famous quote by Ernest Hemingway saying that he had no idea that the bush pilot that he knew in Africa could write this way. The whole book is quotable. It's one of those books. I can't recommend it highly enough. I was happy to get this hardcover from, I think, the 80s that has a photo insert. His original one didn't, as far as I know. But I wanted to read one especially prescient passage here. She was a seat-of-the-pants pioneer aviator and lived long enough to sense that life was going to disappear. And this paragraph never fails to give me a chill. One day, the stars will be as familiar to each man as the landmarks, the curves, and the hills on the road that leads to his door. And one day, this will be an airborne life. But by then, men will have forgotten how to fly. They will be passengers on machines whose conductors are carefully promoted to a familiarity with labeled buttons, in whose minds knowledge of the sky and the winds and the way of the weather will be extraneous as passing fiction, and the days of the clipper ships will be recalled again, and people will wonder if clipper means ancients of the sea or ancients of the air. That day, of course, has come. Professional pilots that I know from major airlines say they can't remember the last time they actually flew the plane. It flies itself. They basically chip in at landings and takeoffs. But especially the pros of that, the almost biblical cadence of it, the ways of the wind and the weather, that's just lovely. And she has that ear throughout. You almost wonder what might have happened if she hadn't lost her heart to the sky and to adrenaline, if she turned to writing instead, full time. But anyway, West with the Night, I am sure, shows up at thrift shops near you. You will love it. It's a bolt of lightning, so by all means get it if you find it for $1. And that's it. That's just 4 random recommendations from my latest thrift shop expedition. I'll be back to new books tomorrow, so brace yourself. Thanks very much.